Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
Empire of the Suns.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellan Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. What up, man?
Hi. I got a kid watching Toy Story, so if a child joins this chat at any point in time, then Toy Story 2 is not as good on the 31st watch.
I think it really picks up around watch 37, though. So if the kid just sticks around for those 6 more watches, he'll be good. Kevin Durant got traded. He got dealt to the Houston Rockets on the day of Game 7 of the NBA Finals. So I guess we can call it a myth now that no big news can happen on big days for the league, because this is our first Game 7 nearly a decade. I'm sure they want all of their attention on Game 7 itself, and then the following news cycle the next couple of days can be about Kevin Durant, but not on the Suns and the Rockets watch, because there has been a trade. Durant is going to Houston. The Suns are getting back Jaylen Green, Dillon Brooks, the number 10 overall pick in this year's draft, and 5 second-round picks. Your reaction, Kev?
Honestly, I'm not surprised by it. I think that's the best they can do. And the quick version is they put themselves in this position to get not a good trade. I don't know what you want to argue is the biggest piece of this. I would argue number 10. I mean, Jaylen Green is a good player, a good starter. Does he help the Suns do what they want to do in terms of changing their identity? No. But this is kind of like par for the course when you put yourself in an awful position where it's not even the player that you want to trade. That's Bradley Beal. It's the guy you just have to trade because you put yourself into such a terrible financial spot. So here we are. I think, I know Gambo's reported that Jaylen Green looks like he's going to stay here. I don't know why we're talking about this on the Sunday, days before the draft, when like they could have gone 3 more days to figure this out. And if they're not going to use those 3 days to trade him and reroute him, I don't know why we're here doing this right now, but maybe that's me saying my Sunday's ruined or something. But yeah, I mean, what are your general thoughts that you have not already told our audience who has been patiently waiting for me to arrive here?
It's all good, buddy. I think that they got punked. And I think they got punked in the trade negotiations specifically. Now, I think that is biased a bit or impacted a bit by how public all of this was, like the amount of information that Gambo was able to provide us over the last week and a half with how all of this went down really let us in to how this situation was unfolding, all the ups, all the downs that went alongside it. But yeah, it just feels like that all of these factors added up to them being in a position where they just had to sell low is the wrong way to put it, because they were always going to be selling low here. But I think that win-win trades exist, but this might be one of the biggest gaps that I can remember covering the NBA, where you look at how you evaluate this on the Rockets side and how you evaluate this on the Suns side. Like for the Rockets not to give up Jabari Smith Jr., Reed Shepherd, Cam Whitmore, like they couldn't even get a sprinkle of Jock Landale or Aaron Holiday. How about like a 20-30 first round pick that's lightly protected or even like protected quite a bit? Like they could not get anything else like that. You said like the Suns put themselves in this position, right? And I'll run through some of what I wrote on ArizonaSports.com to elaborate on that, because there is a lot to it. It's just an easy thing to say without what we mean by that. One, you're trading Kevin Durant on an expiring contract. He's about to turn 37. You were never going to get a big return here. I don't really put that on the Suns necessarily, and I don't really put it on them, the timing of this extension and how he was going to be able to use it as leverage. That's something that just kind of comes with the territory, but I will say comes up in a relevant situation later. The way in which this was reported and out there, and just like, how about like the timeline of like getting a deal done this week? How about just getting it done before the draft? The entire league, whether it was reported or not, was just going to know that the Suns had to trade Kevin Durant and they wanted to get it done before the draft. So if you want to talk about leverage and how much is gone or how much they had in the first place, that's another position where they lost it. They were never going to like run this back. They made it clear that they were going to make very big changes. I'm not saying that the messaging should have been different, but by doing so and by presenting the information this kind of way, they put themselves in this own position. But the biggest and the part we knew Kevin was going to rear its head, and it did here, was what happened in February. And what happened is the Suns agreed to a trade with the Warriors. Like, they had a framework of a deal done. Kevin Durant heard about this and wasn't thrilled about the potential of going back to, not the potential, wasn't thrilled about going back to Golden State. That word gets back to Golden State. The deal gets axed there. If they had never agreed to that deal, if they had never traded him, tried to trade him in the first place in February, or they just would have traded him at the deadline, Gambo has loosely reported, I should phrase it as, the loose particulars of that deal that was with Golden State. Like, that deal, even if I didn't like it at the time, is much better than the one that they just got right now. It was something like Butler, Kuminga, and a couple of picks in the way. Like, that as a framework works much better than this one right now. But there are more layers to this even beyond that, because they hired a GM who had never done this before. He's had been in the NBA front office in an official capacity beyond like a advisory role for a year. And the entire league was going to try to punk him and work tricks on him and just really stand there and posture and be like, you have to trade Kevin Durant. You've never been in this position before. All the tricks in the book, all of them seeing the Matt Ishbia stuff, knowing how things are going in their building at the moment, put them in a position to feel that type of pressure from these teams. And then, of course, like, you can go all the way back to the Beal trade, putting them in a position where the second apron greatly restricted them. You could imagine, Kevin, the possibilities of this trade that could open up if they were able to aggregate salaries, if they were able to include Grayson Allen or Royce O'Neal in this trade, if they were able to take on a little bit more money. Like, there would have been so many more dozens of permutations possible from this deal if they were even in the first apron, but they're in the second apron. And again, all of this is the meme of, well, if it isn't the consequences of my actions. Like, that's the entire part of this trade. And I'm not even talking about trading for Durant 2.5 years ago. I'm talking about everything else that has happened since.
Yeah, I think you can't talk about this without mentioning how terrible the Bradley Beal thing has been in conjunction with the KD trade. Like, again, we thought both were in the moment, like, this is the move to make because you're getting talent for talent. But at some point, like, you got to cut bait at this permutation of this team. And so that's where we are. I'm kind of like, I'm not willing to give them a pass on that, I guess, but I am willing to say, okay, like, you just got to get out of it at some point. And like, yeah, it looks awful right now. Like, I don't even know, again, what the main most talented piece, that's Jaylen Green coming back, is going to be. I don't know what the number 10 pick is going to be like either, as far as immediate talent helping you this year, or even if you whiff on it, then you're in big trouble. To your point about like getting other pieces in this, like, the math probably also doesn't help you when, if you're saying, okay, could we get a Jock Landale in this? I think he's making like 8 or 9 million, but that's a starting center, you know, maybe a top 20, 30 starting center. But yeah, I mean, I think where we are right now, it's, hey bud. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. Yeah, your straw is broken. Yeah.
Oh no, Toy Story 2 did not retain him fully.
Go get me come help me go get it. I'll fix it here. Yeah. All right. Sorry, the straw's broken. I don't even know where I was at, but like, the biggest thing is like the reports that came out Saturday about like the Raptors didn't even consider putting Jakob Poeltl in it. Like, whatever you think of him, is he a top 20 center? Is he top 15? I don't know. But they weren't even willing to do that. The Heat are not even putting in. I need the straw now. Yep. Well, if you kill the straw, then it's hard to use. Sorry. The Miami Heat, if you have Khalil Ware, not even in these discussions, and the Suns are trying to get it, like, that's kind of where the negotiations were at, and I think they saw that the last few days. And again, I don't know. I guess if you waited 2 more days, would you have gotten Jabari Smith Jr. in this? Probably not. So I'm not going to kill him on that part, but that's just where they were. No one was going to bid against them. And that's the thing. You know, in these scenarios, they say it only takes one, right? Well, you could have Team X out there who certainly wanted Kevin Durant. That's not even in the 6 that we've talked about lately. and that team would have given up the farm. But guess what? The math will not work. So it doesn't only take one, because you can't even include more than 6 teams in this whole thing. And that's at the end of the day where the Suns put themselves, and why you, again, I don't know who the most talented person is out of this. I don't know what the best thing is. And again, like, you don't even get a future first out of it. I get 5 seconds is a lot. I get that you can package them, move up. You have a lot of flexibility, trade assets, but yeah, it's a little disappointing on that end. I guess the volume of second round picks is the only thing I can praise them on. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah, I'll unpack the return a little bit here. I think that there are going to be people that think this trade return is fine. And all of that hinges on your opinion of Jaylen Green, essentially. And I think not only Jaylen Green, but his ability to improve, rehabilitate, restore, show potential he didn't show in Houston, whatever you want to say. To say this clearly, there have been at least 2 different stretches over the last 2 years where Jaylen Green's put together a month where he looks like he's a future All-NBA guy. Like, there are, I'm not comparing it to this at all, but like that 5-game stretch where Josh Jackson actually looked like he was going to figure it out. Like, there has been a lot of that with Jaylen Green. If you don't know, number 2 overall pick in the 2021 NBA draft, incredibly athletic, incredibly agile, vertical athlete, like lateral athlete, like the whole thing there. He can jump out of the gym, to say the least, to use more cliches in the way. His development has not gone as expected. It has been staggered, but also in some ways showing perhaps the limitations of who he is as a player. You don't need to take my word for it. You need to look at his contract as to a reason why, if you're not familiar with how these things work. Look at Devin Vassell in San Antonio, who showed a ton of promise 2 years ago, but has been pretty staggered in his improvements since then. And yet he got a 5-year, $145 million deal. A lot of these young players, like you look at Patrick Williams in Chicago, who showed little, and he still got 5 years, $85 million. Like, guys get long-term second contracts in the league. It always sort of works that way. And I always had the feeling or the thought that they were going to get a second contract that someone didn't necessarily want to hold on to. And Jaylen Green's is for 3 years and $105 million with a player option on the 3rd year. And that, to me, speaks to the desire of the player option being in the 3rd year, that they even wanted this to be like a 2-year deal. Like, they probably didn't want this deal to be very long for him. And just the reason why is he just didn't show that he could be a primary scorer on a good team. Like, he just didn't really show enough potential in that regard. Sure, you can pull up the shooting percentages from his first playoff series ever as examples of that. But more for me, the more damning thing is how he just wasn't on the floor a lot in crunch time. They instead played 2 bigs and preyed on offensive rebounds and let Fred VanVleet figure it out. They let Şengün isolate. They let Amen Thompson, who's got a ton of upside and is going to be a very good player in the league, but they kind of let him figure it out with his slashing to the basket. Like, they had the type of guy you want to have the ball in their hands in those positions, but he wasn't ready for it. And the coaching staff knew that and didn't have him on the floor a lot of the time. So that's him as a player. He's good at getting to the rim, good at scoring at the rim. He is not a very good mid-range shooter. He's not a very good 3-point shooter, especially on pull-ups. His catch and shoot numbers are actually fine, and were really good last year. He was at 41% last year, but he is at best an average defender, and he has the athleticism and the profile to make it work and turn into a very good defender. But more importantly, as a playmaker, Cleaning the Glass has a stat called assist to usage ratio, which basically takes the assists that you generate based on how high your usage percentage is. And Green has one of the worst in the league, and he has ever since he got in the league. So if anyone's going to sit here and say that actually, well, Booker's not going to be the point guard, he's going to be the point guard, they're going to share responsibilities even. No, this is point Book all the way forward if they're keeping him. And that doesn't make sense for what Green does as a player anyway. And it doesn't make sense for Book because you need to be maximizing your best player by far. We talked about this last year. What's the gap between a team's first best player, their best player, and their second best player? The Suns now have that biggest gap out of anyone in the league now by far. It's not even close. And that's where you need to maximize Booker and put him in the best positions to succeed. And I think being point Book and trying to be Steve Nash and making everyone else much better than they actually are off the ball is not going to be doing that. Dillon Brooks is fine, Kevin. He's fine. But he's 29 and works on a contender much better than he does on a 30-win team. Look at PJ Tucker. Look at any other role player on the Suns when they were terrible. and how much better they were on other teams and other situations when they were put in winning basketball. That's Brooks. You'd be better off trying to flip him. He makes $20+ million, so it's not really an easy fit per se, but I think he has enough trade value to get moved. To what you were saying about like what works about this deal, getting number 10 is by far the best part of this deal. It's not even close. And they're just going to have to really hit on that draft pick. Shams is reporting about like they now have 3 firsts and so blah, blah, blah seconds to trade. It's like, no, you should keep those, at least the first. You should keep those, the 2 this year. So they've got 10 and 29 now. Maybe they could try and move up in the trade, in the draft. Maybe they could go elsewhere. And the seconds, like you said, that's useful to get it into. But now when you look at what this team could be in 3 to 5 years, it still feels very unfinished in terms of what could happen over the next week or two. But it's Devin Booker, the guy you take at 10, the guy you take at 29, and then we'll see. Because I don't really think Green factors into this. Gambo himself reported on the air last week that the Suns weren't interested in Green. And now they're going to keep him and they're going to try and rehabilitate his value because I'm guessing he just didn't have any. And teams, even like Brooklyn, Charlotte, whoever, who theoretically makes sense for him, whether it's taking the salary or whether it's actually using him on the basketball court, weren't interested or didn't provide enough for the Suns to be interested, I'm guessing.
This also creates so much of the backcourt jumble. You wrote about it where, I think everyone kind of thought the Suns would be shopping Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal. And there was even Mark Stein had Cody Martin. There's interest in that kind of thing. Like they will have to trade people, one. And hopefully that's one where you get either draft picks or just someone who fits you better, trade a couple guys, get a big, whatever. I guess you bringing up Brooks, the other question there is, okay, does he start with the team? I can argue very strongly that he fits like if we're not going to be the most talented, we will fight you. Like, I think the Brian Gregory, Matt Ishbia, Michigan State stuff actually fits with this Oregon Duck where it's like, yeah, he actually does fit a lot of what you want. But if you have Book, you have Jaylen Green, you're not getting rid of either of them. Where does Dylan Brooks play? Does he do the whole do you remember when Trevor Ariza and Ryan Anderson were on the Phoenix Suns at one point in time and is like, those are our veteran leaders who are going to help the young guys become what they were or what they hope to be. And then what happened was from game 1, Trevor Ariza looked like he had never been more unhappy in his life and realized he had signed with this team and made a big mistake. Or was he a trade asset from the I don't even remember. But point being, he was not pleased. Veterans, to your PJ Tucker call out, like veterans who are in these spots want to go to contenders. They want to compete. And if they get like the sense that an organization is just disorganized, doesn't have it together, the coach doesn't gain respect, which we talked about on the Jordan Knott episodes of this podcast. I'm worried about culture because those guys can be great culture setters in good scenarios, but they can also be very poisonous in bad scenarios where they're unhappy. And then you're not even starting from ground up. You're just killing your culture under the new head coach immediately. So that would be my biggest concern there with the Dylan Brooks thing. I think he's over, people just don't like him, obviously. I'm giving him like a lot of credit for being just like the most annoying human being in the NBA, but like there's some room for this to go badly with him too. So yeah, it's the number 10 pick. It's can you flip a bunch of players between now and Wednesday to do even more damage and make this draft really a good thing for you?
Yeah, I think the Brooks point is really good actually, because and I'm not saying like the Suns just like would take this trade and like shouldn't take Jaylen Green in the deal and like it's just better if they got Brooks 10 and whatever. Like again, Green is, I don't know if he's closer to a positive asset or a negative asset at this point. I don't really know where I fall on that, but I will say that the idea of like Brooks next to Booker actually makes like quite a bit of sense when I was talking about like the type of skill set that you need there. But to go back to like the take and just like how I think they got punked in this deal originally, like not getting Jabari Smith Jr. in this deal is kind of crazy because Houston can value him and think that he's going to improve and all this kind of stuff. But again, 20 minutes a game in the playoffs, wasn't on the floor a lot in crunch time. And when he was, he was in the corner, not really impacting the game too much at all. And I like him, and I like the idea of him coming back to the Suns. But if you look at how all of this kind of stuff sort of happened and unfolded, we basically got word through, again, all this reporting and Gambo stuff. Like Tari Eason was like never going to be a guy that Houston wanted to include in this deal. We didn't hear Jabari's name in that instance. So their new look team, they've got Dylan Brooks minutes to fill, but they've got Durant, Thompson, Eason, and Smith. So Smith is either their third or their fourth wing that they're about to have to pay. And they couldn't get him in this deal. And I just don't know how you do this deal and not get him. Again, that could just be my old Tyrese Halliburton, Kings, Pacers rule of like, you can't control how another team feels about a certain guy. And maybe they're just way higher on Jabari Smith Jr. than they should be. But yeah, again, like not getting like it, but that specific point speaks to how like they didn't get like a future first in here somewhere. Like it's just, it's a brutal deal. And it just completely goes back to how it feels like they just got hoodwinked, bamboozled by everything that sort of unfolded around them. I sure wish it wasn't the case from my perspective in covering the team the next couple of years. But yeah, and now I think the point that they sort of land on, Kevin, is you look at how they get this done over the next couple of years. There's more work to be done, as we've alluded to, over the next week or two and in free agency and all that kind of stuff. But this was like their big shot, as I've talked about a ton over the last 6 months. This is their big shot to sort of do what they want to do, which is keep Devin Booker, reshape the roster over the next 2 to 3 years, and then contend with him one more time. You look at what they've got, and there's no way to feel confident that that's going to happen. I think there were iterations of trades like this where the Suns weren't the absolute winners of it. They weren't even like, you could look at it kind of as a middling return, but you could feel good about where they could be in 2 to 3 years if those pieces work out. But like, I just don't see how Green works out. I don't see Dylan Brooks being here in 2 to 3 years when they're ready to contribute. He has 2 years left on his deal. It comes down to number 10, it comes down to number 29, and it comes down to whatever else they can trade to get younger pieces to reshape the team. It's just a tremendous challenge for Jordan Ott now with the way this roster is currently constructed and is going to be constructed. It's just setting themselves up for failure, and it's a brutal position that they're in right now.
I'll give them this. There are, again, I think we'll see in the next few days. And I always said, like, we'll know in a few months at the end of the season. I said it, we'll know in the few months coming how well this goes. Like they have to get stuff done now. And if this is the roster that's going to be set, then yeah, they're in big trouble. Like, we don't even know who their assistant coaches are, but the whole point in the Ott discussion was he doesn't know what he's working with. And so if they have this team and they can't pull off a couple of trades in the next coming days, I'm going to be super like, this is not a good sign, because they do have to pretty much rebuild here and just eat, whatever the bad things are that come with resetting and reloading. And freeing up money is one. Like, if we see them free up tons of money, that's good. If you get even, whatever you think Grayson Allen can get in a return, that's good. If you can tell me who the starting center and I don't know, starting point guard, starting power forward, I need to know like 2 more starters in the next few days is what I'm trying to say. And there's not good signs of that. Even if you say the number 10 pick is one of them, I don't know. I don't know, man.
Yeah, and I was really against, not really against, but was against the concept of win now pieces sort of being in the trade. Like we talked about, I don't know how much we talked about on our podcast, but it felt like it happened for like weeks and weeks and weeks when it was like a week where it happened. But like the Gobert, DiVincenzo, whatever Minnesota would have offered. But again, we're not going to sit here and act like, I think the only thing I've seen out so far is what Miami would have offered, and theirs was the same poo-poo platter that they failed to acquire a superstar with for 7 years running, or 7 superstars running, not years running, stars running. That's the only deal that got out there, and it was just a bunch of like young players that kind of sort of do stuff, but not great, and a pick. So that's not what you should do. to say the least. But like the Minnesota offer, if they would have offered Gobert, if he would have been included in the deal or whatever, like the structure that would have at least like provided for you makes sense. But like I don't see their structure out of this right now. Like it would have balanced out their roster a little bit better. And not saying that because they need to win games next year. I'm saying that like in terms of building up towards the future, we just need to see what this roster, incredibly uneven roster, looks like. And the worst part of all this, I think, Kevin, and apologies at this point, probably should have said it earlier for the doom and gloom, but we're also here 9 years into this podcast. We've always told you how we felt. We were always super low on this team when they sucked. We were also super high on them when they were great. You're talking to guys who picked the Suns to win the finals on multiple occasions going into seasons. So just wanted to get that part out of the way here. Now they are in a position where they have to make a trade. We just saw what happened with that. Yeah, and we just saw what happened with that. Like that could apply to Beal. That could apply to Brooks, Allen, or O'Neal. So again, they are in a position where their leverage is compromised already. And so not getting this trade is a failure in many ways, but another way it's a failure right now is they weren't able to get this into a 3 or a 4 or 5 team deal, whatever it may be, to get all of these future trades they have to do out of the way. Like I'm not even talking about trading Green, which they should try and do, but it doesn't sound like they're going to. It's trading all the other guys. So now you look at like what they could get back for those guys. It's going to be lower than what we expect because their leverage is compromised again. And again, like it just speaks to ineptitude. I don't know how else to say this, but it just, you interpret everything you want to interpret, everyone's opinion, subjective, whatever. That's how I'm taking it, is that there's ineptitude at hand here.
And to point this out, reminder, they were trying to trade Kevin Durant when they had to and didn't necessarily want to at the trade deadline. And I think sometime in February, after the trade deadline, when it didn't happen, after they had spent from at least mid-December on to that point of trying to make Kevin Durant trades and got nowhere with it, I said in February, after the deadline, they have no reason to do anything this season in the front office other than try to find a good Kevin Durant trade. They have February, March, April, May, most of June until the draft to do that. And they came up with this to show you how bad the leverage was on them, like how little leverage they had. I mean, like they had half a calendar year plus, I don't know what it is, since December. Yeah, they were basically, since if we said Christmas and be nice, we've had half a calendar year to get a good trade and nothing came up because of the, again, financial restrictions and the leverage. So yeah, I mean, we knew that they were going to have a really hard time impressing us or even looking half decent coming out of this. And there's very many reasons why other teams were just like, I'm going to get Kevin Durant without offering much. So that's where we are.
You got anything else to say? Is there any other takes from this? Like, we're obviously going to podcast again before the draft. There's a lot to get into about number 10. I could rattle off a little bit about 10 here if you want. But I think like that's the base of it. There's more to talk about with Kevin and like how this whole trade went down and all that kind of stuff. But I think that's for next episode because we're so reactionary in the moment here that we don't want to overstep too much with what we're saying. Obviously the deal with him did not work out. It's just a catastrophic deal that you sort of look back on at the end of the day because you acquired him. It was a huge gamble at the time. It was something that I thought they should do at the time. I thought it made sense at the time and still believe it makes sense now. Like, I think the logic behind what they did isn't like compromised because of what they did or how this all went. But you won one playoff series in 3 years with him and 0 in the last 2. You didn't even make the playoffs last year when the two of them, Booker and Durant combined, missed under 30 games. So there's really no other way to look at it. And I think next episode we'll get into more everyone's favorite game, the blame game, and who exactly is at fault here, how much of the responsibility, the onus of how much this didn't work is on the front office and the positions they put Durant in, and then Durant himself. I think that it's not fully on one person or not fully on one group. I think it's a balanced thing as always, but I think that is where we can leave it on him. Do you have anything to add on that before we talk about it more next episode?
Yeah, so real quick, I mean, I'll point out, when did Kevin Durant have his best stretch with Devin Booker? Because that's ultimately why you traded for him. I would say during the Denver series, when he hardly knew his team under Monty Williams. That was his best run with Devin Booker. That's when both of them, I would say, are playing at their peak together. And then it just never reached that even close again. So that's kind of where I see the ultimate failure in all this, is they just never figured that out. I guess looking forward, the draft is Wednesday. So I think, Kellan, we'll talk about it right now live. You will probably will get together for another podcast. You have a KD legacy column where you'll go more into depth into that, right? And then we are going to have to hit number 10 picks like super hard in like a day and a half-ish or two. So just be on the website. Kellan's going to have a lot. Anything else about coverage, what we're doing up until Wednesday? I'm sure we'll have a draft show, that kind of thing too.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get done, but I do want to get something out on number 10 tonight, probably just so everyone isn't like completely wallowed in misery. I want to provide some optimism because I think this draft is super fun and intriguing for all the reasons we talked about the last couple of weeks and what they could get at number 29. I feel that way times 10 about the slot in the late lottery. To simplify it before we really go in on it on the next podcast and in all the words, I think it's a perfect spot for the Suns to be in because the prospects in that range, the upside that they have is even higher than some of the guys that are going to get picked ahead of them. But there's such a big gap between floor and ceiling for pretty much everyone in that range that they're going to be in that range because of that gap. That gap is scary, but at the same time, it offers opportunity. I said somewhere, I think, but there's a guy that's going to get drafted. Let's say the top 8 is 7 of the top 8 is Flag, Harper, Bailey, Edgecombe, Johnson, Knipple, Malawach. I believe I named like the 7 guys right there that are going to go in that range. Like, let's say those are the guys that go in the top 7 or 8. Like, you look beyond that, you look at Fears, Yakuchonis, Bryant, Jace Richardson, Essengay, Baron J. There's a couple of different guys, a handful of guys. Yegor Demon out of BYU is another one where I believe that one of the 3 best players in the draft will be in that range, at least. And I feel like there's a non-zero chance that one of them is the best player in the draft. That has a little bit to do with how I feel about Flag, a lot more to do with the ceiling that is there. So they have like a big opportunity there. A big thing we're going to be talking about is like, can you take anyone that's under 6'8" with that pick? Because of the roster position that they are currently in right now. Can you even take a point guard with how much that point guard would have to be on the ball to get value out of them? And you're going to have the ball in Green and Booker's hands a whole lot over the next however many years that this thing rides out till. They'll want a center. Malawach is going to be gone before they pick. I feel pretty confident about that. And there's not really a center on the board coming up next. Baron J is really the only one. He's also only played basketball for 3 years and is very raw. I really like what he offers, but he's raw. Would they reach on a center? Would they trade down for a center? Or would they just hang there and take like an accentuating wing? Because I think I get behind that idea more and more. Of course, Carter Bryant out of Arizona is one of those guys. There's South Carolina's Colin Murray-Boyles as well. So it's a really fascinating and intriguing position that they're in right now with that pick. And now this just becomes, okay, with 10 and 29, can you hit once? Can you hit twice? And the degree to which you hit will determine how sort of this whole thing goes and whatever finds on the margins that you can sort of get from there.
I appreciate you thinking about everyone's mentals and trying to be positive from here on out after this with your writing, at least.
Gotta try, man. Gotta try. All right. I think that'll be it. Thank you to everyone who joined us live on YouTube. We really appreciate it. And that'll be it for the pod. As Kevin said, we'll have one more gearing up for the draft, really diving into 10, 29. Fingers crossed they don't trade those. I don't think that'd be a good idea. We'll see. But until then, thank you for listening and see you later.